Welcome to a presentation from the Special and Area Studies Collections Department of the George A. Smathers Libraries at the University of Florida. I'm Dan Rabusin, African Studies Curator. I'm pleased to be with you today to present this collection talk in a series with my colleagues, all curators at the Smathers Library. After more than 2 months of isolating for public health, I hope it's a pleasure for all of us to open our imaginations to different forms of daily life in distant places and times. Please join me as I share this global first library collection of African street comic books as together we consider their unique pleasures and place in world literature. I titled this talk, Contextualizing African Vernacular and Street Literature, because it's worth considering, in a broad context, where these cheap but vibrant booklets come from, as well as, from a local perspective, what they're all about. On the latter point, unrivaled comic artist Papa Mfumu explicitly emphasized that he aimed to engage his local community in the Democratic Republic of Congo through their lingua franca, an urban dialect of the Lingala language. These comic booklets are primary vernacular sources because they offer local, insider perspectives on the lived experiences and events of 1990s Kinshasa, expressed in the language of Africa's second largest city. Indigenous cultures worldwide were extremely stable, with kinship, economy, politics, religion, art, and oral literature supporting one another and maintaining durable social structures prior to European mercantile influence. Stories were an important way to understand the complexities of the world and integrate new experiences into durable social understandings. Oral storytelling remains important today, even as it may be imaginatively referenced in visual forms or adapted into hybrids incorporating text and images, as with comic books. Contrary to the stereotype, African history includes written manuscripts, evidence of sophisticated centralized states from the time of the Middle Ages. Codex or book form manuscripts were preserved through family libraries, for example in Timbuktu, Mali, and in Ethiopia's monasteries and imperial courts. Ethiopia's Kebra Nagast dynastic story was first written down about 700 years ago. This 1375 Catalan manuscript map depicts Mansa Musa, king of the Mali Empire. It's a highlight of the traveling exhibit, Caravans of Gold, Fragments in Time, Art, Culture, and Exchange Across Medieval Saharan Africa, currently scheduled at the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art through the end of 2021. The Mali Empire supplied as much as 75% of the gold in medieval Europe through a vast, efficient network of trade routes. Mali's Sunjata oral epic, upon which Disney's The Lion King movie is based, was transmitted through storytellers, known as griots. Printed summaries and translations of Sunjata appeared in the late 18th and early 19th century. We can see a similar process with European chapbooks. The word is from the same root as cheap. These were sold by itinerant street vendors, known as chapmen, from the 1500s, although this one depicted here is from much later. Popular print culture in Europe frequently relied on folk tales, such as Jack the Giant Killer. As with classical music themes, some traditional stories became incorporated into artistic or literary forms. Chapbooks from mid-20th century Nigeria appeared after colonial government offices and missions updated their letterpresses. The Onitsha book market catered to newly literate Igbo people. Local booksellers purchased these presses and supplied local readers with an array of popular themes, many of which were evidently aimed at young men, as you might have guessed from several of the titles here. Kurt Tomitz's compilation, Life Turns Man Up and Down, High Life, Useful Advice, and Mad English, is shown here, along with authentic Onitsha Market chapbooks from the author's collection. Among the first African-authored books published by European presses during the mid-20th century, both West African titles shown here reflect oral themes and styles. Among the most important themes of 20th century African literature is conflict resulting from migrants' attempts to reconcile urban and rural values and the challenges of maintaining family ties, or conversely, preserving one's independence from them. Publishing on the African continent itself, however, is notably underdeveloped. Creative voices, outside of the small group of successful literary writers, rarely find a wide audience to support their work. Editorial cartoonists publish in many African newspapers, but interestingly, comic book creators are among the few other indigenous voices with significant readership on the continent. Before web-based comics became viable in recent years, handmade comic books circulated in many African cities. One of the most popular, creative, and truly fascinating of these creators is Papa Mfumueto from the Democratic Republic of Congo. This original ink poster from his studio advertises a long-running comic series based on a traditional oral theme. Mwana Mbanda translates as the stepdaughter. Blondine Mambwene is a Cinderella-like character in a family based on one the artist knows. The moral here is that one should raise a stepchild just as her own. This poster demonstrates a favored technique. The creator often adapts images to new uses. Here he includes himself in the frame with an active cast of characters. He excels at addressing fellow Kinshasans in their urban vernacular, reflecting their interests and conversations, as he offers a glimpse of the disorderly order that rules the city. Selling comics on the street and in outdoor markets for the price of a loaf of bread, as he put it, the artist speaks to the literate, the semi-literate, and the illiterate, kids and women, academics and priests, the Congolese masses as a whole. Mfumueto maintained a furious pace of production through the 1990s, producing a wide variety of stories that reflected readers' sometimes lurid interests. He claimed a unique ability to report on events in the unseen world. He was spectacularly active and popular in this milieu, producing up to 10 issues of his many comic book series monthly, perhaps circulating over 100,000 self-published issues in the city. Here are two popular representations of Mamiwata, a traditional deity with an array of religious associations from Liberia to Angola and throughout the Caribbean. Some images include crocodile or male forms, but most common is a mermaid, perhaps with a snake, seated by the water combing her hair. The image on the right is from the 19th century. Mfumueto presents a futuristic Mamiwata in this story, reminiscent of The Little Mermaid, as with the transformation in the center image. These are all original art for his comic book. Graduate assistant Aurélie Maquetta is currently working to contextualize these stories and characters, rooting our online presentation in the Congolese experience. Mfumu claims a unique ability to report on the invisible world, unseen by others. Note the appearance of a crocodile man on the left, possibly reflecting Mamiwata themes, but it also signals the dangers of using black magic. The center comic book cover explains why Kinshasa's main outdoor market is so crowded, as deceased market women rise from their graves, carrying goods for sale. At right is a long-running series with a main character who defies social norms to maintain his playboy lifestyle after death. He is pursued by a zombie, as seen here, but elsewhere becomes one himself. These three covers and comic page images are all critiques of the notorious dictator Mobutu Sese Seko, seen in the cover on the left in 1997. The center cover, with the green python, is from one of the very first comic books Mfumu released, The Python That Swallowed a Woman in Kinshasa, in 1990. In it, an affluent playboy seduces a young woman, takes her home against her will, and transforms into a python who swallows his victim. In the next issue, for which fans had to wait while the artist produced enough copies to meet the high demand, he vomits her remains as cash. Readers saw it as a metaphor for the dictator's abuse of state resources. On the right, Mobutu's spirit stands between an angel on his right and a devil on his left, arguing his case for avoiding damnation. Finally, I want to offer a quick look at some of the fascinating but messier and more difficult objects in this research collection. These original drawings include draft story ideas, conceptual sketches, layout plans, and notes that reflect the artist's complete creative and production processes. His self-portrait at the upper right is a recurring feature in these comic books, which he uses to address readers directly, invite interaction over email, mention local events and places, and publicly respond to selected fan letters. He even provides his home address and phone number in several of these. The images used here are available online as open access and/or in complete compliance with the principles of fair use for educational purposes. This presentation will be made available online with a full transcript, which you can view at your leisure for access to these references. Thank you for listening to this presentation from the Special and Area Studies Collections Department of the George A. Smathers Libraries at the University of Florida.